It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. And now here's your host, Geno Jones.
Hey, it's a brand new day. It's a brand new week. It is showtime. The Geno Jones Show. I know, you saying we can read. You got to be the dude. You're standing in front of this big-ass sign that says The Geno Jones Show. So I come to you live Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. in Chicago, 3:30 p.m. out on the West Coast, out in the city of Angels, Los Angeles, and all up and down the West Coast. Please subscribe to The Geno Jones Show YouTube channel, like I said, live 5 days a week, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe, share, like, and binge watch all my back episodes. Tell everybody you know. Everybody, as Nelly would say, everybody that you like, love, kind of okay with. Folks you can't stand, don't like. Folks you hate, strangers, aliens from outer space. I don't care. Tell them aliens to check out the show. They'll love it too. All right, we're going to jump right into it today. Brand new day, brand new week. Congratulations. So we had the big semifinal. So we had the AFC semifinal games, National Football League, the AFC American Football Conference, National Football Conference. So Saturday, the Philadelphia Eagles, fly, Eagles, fly. So the Eagles, man, they beat the draws off. They beat the brakes off the Giants. I thought the Giants going to play a little better. 38-7, Kansas City. The Kansas City Chiefs, they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Kansas City 27-20. And then Sunday, man, them Cincinnati Bengals. Shout out to my man rapper, Shice DiBiase. Cincinnati brother, man, them Bengals is balling. Cincinnati Bengals, they beat the Buffalo Bills up in Buffalo. And shout out to Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills player, a young brother, I think he was 23, went into cardiac arrest. He died on the field about 3 weeks ago tonight. He was actually at the game. He's made a remarkable recovery. Literally, his heart stopped. He technically died, and they brought him back to life. So he was able to go to no, he didn't play, but he was up in the owner's box cheering on his team. But even that inspiration wasn't enough, man. Cincinnati was balling. So they won in Buffalo yesterday, series 27-10. So they put a beat down on the Bills. And then, I know, Michael Irvin, all you Cowboy fans. Now, there's some Cowboy fans. Shout out to Edwin, the Chef Wright, on Heaven 100.1 AM 1390, a co-worker of mine, and DJ Tantrum on the box. They're Cowboy fans, but they're not neurotic. They're not delusional. They know football. They just happen to be Cowboy fans. But some of y'all, like Stephen A. Smith says, all right, man, because after the Cowboys lost last night, they were up in Santa Clara. Santa Clara, basically, that's the San Francisco metro area. So they played the 49ers up in the Bay Area, and they got beat 19-12 right after the game. Some of these delusional Cowboy fans were talking about, well, we still going to win the Super Bowl. This year, no. Y'all lost. It's over. Till next season. So get ready for that. So next weekend, the 49ers and the Eagles play next Sunday at 3 p.m. And Kansas City Chiefs play the Cincinnati Bengals. That game is in Kansas City, 6:30 p.m. And the 49ers travel to Philadelphia. Shout out to Jalen Hurts. Now, for all the men that are holding out hope for Nia Long's hand, I got some good news. What kind of sort of? Because it doesn't mean that she going to get with you. But I know you're holding out hope. Keep hope alive. Jesse said, keep hope alive. Well, so Nia Long said that she is still single AF, ass blank. You can figure out what the F stands for, like a duck. Just replace the D with an F. So now a lot of people saw pictures and some video. Nia Long and R&B singer from B2K, Omarion, they attended this premiere of this Netflix series show called You People. So they saw that. Wait a minute. They kind of holding hands, going to the premiere together. So Bruz was like, damn, Nia done found a dude already. She just got rid of Ime Udoka, dude she'd been with for over a decade that was cheating on her with one of his co-workers. Really didn't. Well, I'm going to be nice, but I'm just saying. I saw a picture of the co-worker he was cheating on. And Nia, I'm just saying, dude, you know, it's called an upgrade. You want to upgrade. You don't want to downgrade. So you did not trade up. So I don't know what that was all about, but yeah, you can have that. So Nia is single. She says she is single AF. And basically she said, listen, everybody, I know you saw the pictures, the video. Simmer down, because I am single as F. So I guess that means, fellas, you hope, if you're still holding out hope for her hand, keep hope alive. That's all I got to say. So I'm about to bring on my guest. And, well, I want to shout out, because we're going to be talking about education. So let me shout out. On my radio show, I have a segment called Geno's Academic All-Stars, where I recognize young people for their academic excellence, any student from kindergartners to seniors in high school. If they have an A average, I want to salute them. I salute them. I shine a spotlight on them, and I celebrate their success in school. And today's academic all-star is Jamia Frazier Smalls. So Jamia is an 8th grader at Buford Middle School. Buford is part of the Charleston, South Carolina metro. Is probably about, Buford, maybe good 45 minutes, just, I want to say south of downtown Charleston, South Carolina. So her mom is a fan of mine. She lives, actually, Jamia has been on I've been doing this for about 18 years now. So Jamia has been an academic all-star of mine for many years. She's in 8th grade. I think she's been an academic all-star of mine since kindergarten or 1st grade. So thank you, Rosalind. Rosalind Smalls is her mom. And once again, congratulations to Jamia Frazier Smalls. So if you want me to shout out a student as one of my academic all-stars on my TV show, just send me an email, GenoJonesShow@gmail. Just email me a copy of the report card and, you know, give me some background information on the student. Just one short sentence. Tell me something about the student. Everybody has a story, and I want to hear that student's story and what has inspired them to be a success in school. Now, since we're about to talk about schools, Governor Too Short DeSantis, that's right, that's what I call him, Governor Too Short, Ron DeSantis. This dude, governor of Florida, little mini-me want to be Trump Hitler. So he is banking, because he's got to think about ban. He wants to ban everything. He's banning books, pass a law, you can't say gay. It's like he wants to erase, you know, the LGBTQ community, and then he wants to ban these books. Now he was a history teacher. I found out. I was like, really? I think he was a history teacher. Maybe at an Ivy. No, I don't know. I think he went to Yale, but he was a history teacher. But his version of history, oh my God! So Governor Too Short of Florida has banned. They call AP, or advanced placement. These are like college level courses you can take in high school for students. So he has banned AP, or advanced placement, African American studies and culture from being taught in high schools in Florida, because he says that AP African American courses lack educational value. Now, I don't advocate violence, but I just have to confess, I might catch a charge, because if I saw Governor Too Short, I might just slap the taste out of his mouth and contact a good lawyer. Because what? You are banning AP African American Studies courses on the history and culture of African Americans because it lacks educational value? And you had the nerve to let those words come out of your mouth? And you are the governor of the state of Florida? And then he went on to say that the African American courses, the AP African American courses, include indoctrination of queer theory. Just stop talking. Now here's the hypocrisy. In high school in Florida, You can take an AP advanced placement course in German. You can take an AP course in Italian, history, culture, language. Oh, by the way, Governor Two Shorts, his ancestors are from Italy. So you can be taught about his ancestors, but I can't be taught, my children can't be taught about their culture. They can be taught about German, so there are AP courses taught in high school about German, Italian, Japanese, European, and Spanish history, language, and culture in Florida, but not African American culture. So there's been a lot of this stuff going on. So I've been waiting all year long to bring back for a while. My guest today, he is returning to the show. He is an adjunct professor of history. This brother got the knowledge, got the passion, got the energy, the charisma, and all the receipts that you could need. Governor Too Short, you need to holler at this man so you can learn some things about not just African American history, but history, period. So he's an adjunct professor of history. He is a historian. He is an author that has a new book called The 1895 Segregation Fight, South Carolina. He is a adjunct professor at the Citadel here in the Charleston, South Carolina Metro. Let me bring on camera, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to have him back on the show, Professor Damon Fordham. Professor Fordham.
Yes, sir.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much. I have been waiting to get you on the show. So you heard the lead in and you heard that this foolishness is coming out of Florida, but here in South Carolina, we have book banners too. So let's not let them off the hook. And I know you will speak to that. Governor Too Short is really like the ringleader, as I call him. So, Professor Fordham, what do you think? I want to get your take as an educator and a historian. What's behind this banning of books and Black history teaching? What's really behind it?
Very simple. He wants votes. There's a huge bigot vote out there that's been energized by the most recent to last president, and he wants a piece of that vote. So therefore, this type of thing works in energizing his quote unquote base to have these straw man arguments, making this a problem where it really isn't, but it gets to the emotions of his followers. So therefore, he plays that fiddle and they give him the vote. It's that simple, but none of this is anything new, I have to say, because you see, in South Carolina, for example, as well as Georgia.
I lost your audio. I don't know if you muted yourself. I lost your audio. So talk again for me. Because in mid-sentence, there you go. Okay, I can hear your mic open now. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, as I was saying, in South Carolina, you had the Mary Sims Oliphant books up until the year after I graduated, 1984.
Wow.
Where they basically banned the teaching of the positive achievements of African Americans during Reconstruction, slave revolts, the fact that South Carolina had 2 African American governors during Reconstruction, yes. Alonzo Jacob Ranzier and Richard Howell Gleaves from 1870 to 1877. University.
Your audio dropped out on us again. I don't know what happened with your mic. Your mic dropped, the audio dropped back out again. So you might cut your mic back on. I don't know what happened. I can't hear you. There you go. I can hear your mic is open again. There you go.
All right. So anyway, as I was about to tell you, you also had the fact that the public school system in South Carolina was in fact started by a suggestion by an African American named Robert Smalls in 1868. Things like that were censored from our history books in favor of pro-Confederate history from about 1917 or so up until 1984. So this is nothing new. And the reason, and part of the reason for that was actually part of the very reason for racism itself. You see, throughout the history of the Deep South, this area was run by a wealthy class of white planters, okay? The planting class, that is. And so their thing was that their biggest fear was that the poor whites would find common cause with their Black brethren. And so to prevent that from happening, they separated and divided the poor whites and blacks as a means of making one hate the other, so that the two would not come together and basically overturn that wealthy class that was exploiting them both and running the South. In simple terms, Geno, divide and conquer of the poor so that the rich could stay rich. And that's what racism is really all about.
Yes. Man, please say that part again. And for our white brothers and sisters, poor and working class, you know, Dr. King, listen, many believe, if you read the book about William Pepper, Dr. Martin Luther King, all the civil rights marches and the big speech he gave in 1963, he was not assassinated. He didn't get assassinated until he started the Poor People's Campaign, when he brought poor and working class, black, white, and Hispanics together, and we went to Memphis to fight for those sanitation workers, black, white, and otherwise. When people confuse, and you can speak to this better than I can. I did a monologue on this last Monday on the King holiday. People, you know, they romanticize and, you know, they want to kind of, turn Dr. King into like some Disney character. But they don't understand his message. He made it clear, Dr. Fordham, and you will speak to this, that you couldn't get racial justice without economic justice. There's no racial justice without economic justice. And people don't want to talk about that.
Well, not only is that true, but you also have to consider the fact that, see, most people, the average person only knows what they are told and what they are shown, you see. And I'm going to get into the solution to what to deal with DeSantis and all of that a little bit later on in this. But part of when you look and study these things for yourself, you'll see the kind of things that you just mentioned, in that there was way more to Dr. King than making that one simple speech. And even with that, they only pay the last 10 or so minutes of it with the dream. It doesn't get into the whole thing about the bad check that the nation wrote as far as the Negroes and language of that time was concerned and so forth. And in fact, that whole march, incidentally, Dr. King didn't start that march. That was A. Philip Randolph, who started that march as the March for Jobs and Freedom back in 1963. Dr. King was the featured speaker because he was the most eloquent and charismatic of these people. And so that put him in the stratosphere. But the plain truth of the matter is this: the whole issue of race was done primarily as a means of confusing the poor whites and dividing them from the blacks, because had the two of them come together, the South would have been a whole lot more progressive to begin with. And as a matter of fact, after the whole thing with the Confederacy, taking it back to that, was they left the Union for one main reason, and that was the election of Abraham Lincoln in November of 1860. The next month they just seceded, and they said so in their whole thing with secession, that it was because of our property rights, i.e. right to own slaves. But the thing was, they had to get the poor whites in that fight. It was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight, so they had to delude them with all this stuff about states' rights and Yankees and all that nonsense like that. Some saw through that. In Mississippi, you had what was called the 20 Negro Law, meaning that if you were a rich plantation owner that owned more than 20 black people, you were exempt. So it was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. So after they lost the Confederacy, rather than admit that they misled these poor whites into fighting for rich white people who owned slaves that these poor whites couldn't afford, they rewrote the history as one of noble states' rights and all that sort of thing to sort of soften that blow. Now, here's where black people come in all this. The period from 1865 to 1877 was called the Reconstruction era. That's when they tried to reform the South by passing 3 constitutional amendments. 13th Amendment, 1865, ending slavery. 14th Amendment, 1868, saying that all of us were citizens. 15th Amendment in 1870, saying that black men had the right to vote. So in Louisiana, 1872, you had the first African-American governor, Pinckney Benton Stewart Pinchback, who also founded Southern University down in Baton Rouge, second largest black college in America, right? Throughout the South, you had these interracial governments passing progressive laws. South Carolina, over on Meeting Street in downtown Charleston, at Charleston Clubhouse, which is now the J. Waties Waring Judicial Center, they passed laws calling for the end of going to jail for debt. Women would be allowed to divorce abusive husbands. There would be state hospitals and mental institutions. And it was Robert Smalls, the Black man from Beaufort, who in slavery led himself and his family aboard a ship called the Planter to sail out of Charleston into freedom. He got up at that convention and said, January 23rd, 1868, yes, exactly 154 years ago, 55 years ago today, resolved all children between the ages of 7 and 14 must go to public school at least 6 months a year under penalty of noncompliance. Wow. That Black man helped start the public school system of South Carolina.
Wow.
So what happened? The wealthy class of whites played on the poor whites when this was happening. On December 24th, 1865, 6 Confederate veterans got together in Pulaski, Tennessee, and formed the Resistance Army against Reconstruction. They named themselves after the Greek word for circle, which is kuklos, and the Scottish word for family, which is clan. That's how the Ku Klux Klan started.
Absolutely.
And that led to 12 years for major racial violence until the federal government put a stop to Reconstruction in 1877.
Wow, man, you are dropping some nuggets. Dr. Fordham, kind of circling back, because all this is going full circle. I was talking about Governor Too Short, and even the politicians here in South Carolina, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana. My thing is, you really answered the question, because I was going to ask you, what is the fear in teaching the truth? But you spoke to it, and
right.
I guess we could elaborate. And I'm going to use myself as a quick example. When I was a kid, I went to the same school. It was elementary school from K to 8th grade. No, middle school, elementary school, same deal. And I remember being in elementary school learning about the Holocaust. I don't know, I'm thinking maybe 5th grade, somewhere around in there, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Now, when I found out about that, I felt horrible, because I said, how could anybody be so inhumane? Why would you just murder and just kill people in the brutal way that the Nazis killed millions of Jews, primarily, and others, just because of they had a different religion, a different race? So I had compassion and empathy for Jewish people. And are they afraid that young white kids will have compassion for their African American brothers and sisters, understanding the plight that their ancestors? What is the real fear?
Two things. The reason they taught about the Holocaust, the Nazi Holocaust, in schools here, and not what happened to African Americans, is very simple. The Holocaust, for the Nazi Holocaust, that didn't happen here. If that happened here, it would not have been taught as it was over here. So you see, so therefore there wasn't that issue of the guilty conscience with that. Whereas if you taught this stuff here, you'd have to deal with the fact that a lot of the parents and grandparents of these very people are some of the folks that they're talking about, and that's what they find difficult to deal with. There's a combination of that, and there's a fear of turning these kids into revolutionaries against their own country. Those are the two major fears about this.
Because, I've always said, because I've heard people say, well, your Governor Two Shirts, well, we don't want little white kids to feel guilty about slavery and blame themselves. But this is what I had to say, outside of the fact that, well, how do you think the little black kids felt? But when I learned about the Holocaust, it gave me compassion and empathy. And I would think that if young white children learn the full story about America, enslavement, that they would have compassion. If they felt bad, that's a good thing. I wouldn't mind a young white child if they really learned the true plight of African Americans feeling bad. The way I felt bad about learning Jewish people went through the horrors they did in the Holocaust. Because that, to me, if I see a white kid that learns about enslavement and felt bad about it, It meant that they had compassion and humanity and empathy, and maybe would grow up to be an adult to make sure that they would do everything in their power to make sure that we didn't repeat the same mistakes, or they didn't repeat the same mistakes that their ancestors repeated. That just, to me, that makes common sense. Maybe, like you said, that's the fear.
It gets deeper than that. First of all, to say that this would make these white kids feel guilty, see, that shows how uneducated people are about this, because an honest teaching of American history will include people such as William Lloyd Garrison and the abolitionists, and John Brown, who, well, a white man who literally went to war in Virginia to end slavery.
Yes.
People like Viola Liuzzo, one of the white woman from Detroit, who came to Selma, Alabama in 1965 to help Black people vote and was shot by the Ku Klux Klan, whose daughter Sally, by the way, in Tennessee, she's a very good friend of mine, as well as the white freedom riders who came down here in the early 60s along with the Blacks to fight with them against segregation. That's part of the whole story too. So if you're a white child and you told me something like that, I certainly wouldn't feel bad. But again, you have to know this history in order to say what I just said just now. And again, that part of the story isn't told, so many people don't know that. So since the people who follow these type of leaders don't know that, you could easily confuse their mind and exploit the ignorance of the people.
With the few minutes I got left, I want to touch on something you and I talked about off camera, and then I want you to give us tell us a little bit about your book and where people can go order it.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
There's been a narrative that's kind of just been out in the universe, really primarily between us, but also some of your domestic terrorists, white nationalists, anti-Black promoters have tried to promote this narrative that, slavery was in a part, it was kind of like Black people's fault, because if your ancestors, they didn't fight hard enough to get out of slavery and in slavery. And I've heard some Black people, including Kanye West, repeat this anti-Blackness and this anti-Black racist white nationalist nonsense. I just want you to speak to that foolishness from a historian and an educator and a professor, because you got the facts and the receipts. That is far from true.
The South was filled with slave rebellions throughout slavery. You had the Nat Turner Rebellion in Virginia. You had also the Gabriel Prosser Rebellion in Virginia. You had the Dessalines Rebellion in Louisiana, and in Charleston you had the Stono Rebellion, as well as the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion, as well as a rebellion in Camden, South Carolina in 1816, and in my hometown of Spartanburg, South Carolina in 1831. I could go all the way down the list. Herbert Apotheker wrote about this in American Negro Slave Revolts in the year 1943. History is filled with Black people who revolted, because whenever you had slavery, you had rebellions, you had revolts. But again, in order to know this, you have to read. And so since people are not encouraged to read and go to libraries, and we were given the false belief that we were good at all things physical and nothing mental, and that if to hide something from us, you got to put in the book, many grew up believing that nonsense, so they don't know these things. Now, as for my book, it's called The 1895 Segregation Fight in South Carolina. It's a story that was buried in old newspapers about how 6 brave Black leaders, Robert Smalls, who I discussed earlier, William J. Whipper, a Black lawyer here in Charleston, James Wigg and Isaiah Reed, 2 Black lawyers from Beaufort, South Carolina, Thomas Miller, the founder of South Carolina State University, and Robert Anderson, a Black teacher from Georgetown, when Benjamin Tillman tried to make segregation the law of our state. These 6 brave men went to Columbia and fought tooth and nail against that in the face of threats and intimidation and potential violence. But they stood before the world, before the newspapers of the world, letting them know, we're not going to sit here and just let this happen. They were in there arguing with their most articulate best against what was going to happen to them in South Carolina. They lost in the South Carolina legislature 116-7, but even with their loss, that loss led to the foundation of the civil rights movement in South Carolina to come that would undo some of the mess that these guys did.
So, Dr. Fordham, Professor Fordham, could you give everybody the information where they can follow you on social media, where they can order your books? And I got a favor I'm going to ask you, but I want you to first give everyone your social media information and let them know your website where they can go, not just order this book, because you have many books, and so Professor Fordham can tell you all about that.
Yes, you can find my books at the various Barnes and Noble bookstores, as well as local bookstores such as Buxton Books, the Charleston Preservation Society, and the Old Slave Market over on number 6 Chalmers Street. You can find them in your CVS stores throughout South Carolina, as well as your Barnes and Noble stores. You can find them on Amazon also. So they're out there and they're available. These things are out there, and the main thing to do is read. Now, to get back to something you said a little bit earlier, along with being able to find my books, I have a YouTube channel called The American Storyteller, where I break all of this stuff down in the language where the average Jane and the average Joe can understand. And also, this kind of thing lies into the solution to the Ron DeSantis's of the world, because you see, I didn't learn this stuff myself in the classroom. I learned it in the library and from older people. Now, so if these fools try to stop these things in the classrooms, number one, these folks can be sued on First Amendment grounds. Secondly, in South Carolina, you have the Education Improvement Act of 1984, which says in the 3rd and 8th grades, African American history is part of the standards and curriculum. A lot of people don't know that. So you can go on that level, but also in the meantime, those of us who know these things, we can go out to where the people are and teach it in a way that they can understand through churches, community centers, meeting halls, social media, YouTube. You have to go to where the people are and bring it to them in the language which they can understand. Because you see, in the same way that right now in Ukraine, they're fighting the Russians through what? Guerrilla warfare. Well, what we got to do here in America, those of us who know this stuff, is guerrilla teaching.
Listen, that's a drop the mic. That's a drop the mic close right there, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Damon Fordham from the Citadel, adjunct professor of history, historian, and author. So, Professor Fordham, I know I keep on calling him Professor Fordham. It's just your knowledge is like, I really want you to be a regular contributor at least once a month. I'd love to have you come on.
I'd love to.
And I love starting off the week with this. It's like being in class. It's like, because I really think it is, I'm certain of it. It is up to us as African American parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles to make sure that we are sharing this knowledge, to make sure that we are creating libraries in our own homes, because we can't depend on these schools to teach it, even though they should. They want, and Professor Fordham told you why they're not going to teach it. So it's up to us to make sure that we pass this knowledge on. So.
I also have to add too, be careful about what you see on YouTube with a lot of this stuff, because you see, keep in mind that in times of crisis, false prophets do well. And you have these characters on YouTube spreading out all this false information about how we're not from Africa and we're foundational Black Americans, and all this business about how slavery didn't happen, and people with these phony schools taking money from them that never open and all that kind of thing. I'm being for real here. Folks, you have to know how to separate the truth from the trash, and the sense from the nonsense, and the facts from the foolishness, okay? And what you have to understand is that whenever you hear anything like this that you might find interesting, do yourself a favor and do what's called cross-referencing, which means you go back and check other sources to see whether this information aligns, as opposed to whether somebody's just making up stuff just to play with your emotions. Because as Festus used to say on the Gunsmoke show back in the day, how you know if the fellow who wrote the reading right. And that's what you find out.
It's funny you said that, Professor Fordham. My mom is watching, my mother's watching. And my grandfather, who raised me, my two sisters, and my mom was a young mom. I lived with my grandparents, along with my mom and my two sisters. And my grandfather, one of his favorite shows, oh my God, we grew to love it. We hated it because we had to watch it every Monday night, was Gunsmoke. He had to watch Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty and Festus and Doc and all. So you really triggered a fun, great memory because I could just see and hear my grandfather now. He loved him some Gunsmoke and Festus. He loved all those characters.
But see,
Professor
this
Damon
is what
Fordham, you will see Professor Fordham on a regular basis. There's so many things that we want to cover. I want to try to get you back on in a couple of weeks. I want to talk about, because we're talking about solutions, and I really want to speak to our young people who I see in so many cases are fearless, and maybe they can help some of the not so young people be fearless. Because I want to talk about stepping into our power, because there are a lot of forces that's trying to make us believe that we don't have the power, but we have immense power. And I think if we learn our history, our true history, you talked about here in South Carolina, we had a black man started the public school system here in the state of South Carolina. We had, am I correct? We had 2 U.S. senators back in Reconstruction, black senators here in South Carolina. Am I correct?
yes, Robert Brown Elliott and let's see, and Rainey out of Joseph Rainey out of Georgetown. Yeah.
So when you come back on, I want to talk about, let's step into our power by knowing, because if we
Sure.
know how much power we had, our ancestors had, then with all of the obstacles, we've got so much unlimited power. If we bet on ourselves, believe in ourselves, come together and get rid of the divide and conquer mentality, because you spoke on it, the African diaspora, we are all from one place. Doesn't matter
Well, I
if
can tell you,
speak Spanish, Portuguese, French, Dutch, whatever. I mean, you had our ancestors and cousins were just dropped off different parts of the Caribbean, Brazil, South America, even in Australia, globally. But that's a different conversation. Professor
well,
Fordham will have.
let me briefly say that when I was in Africa and saw the cities, the advanced cities in Africa, and saw the true intelligence of people, even out there in the jungle and all that, the wisdom that they had over there, I told them that when I came back to America, I would tell them, my people here, the truth about Africa, so that they could get some of that self-confidence over here that the Africans have over there.
So you just given us the theme for our next episode. I'm gonna check with you off camera in a couple weeks. The theme will be the truth about Africa, a professor, a historian who was just in Africa. So he's gonna give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and not the BS.
So help me God.
Professor Fordham, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for coming on. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Thank you. I told you. That brother, that man he is just dynamite. Let me just click a little button here. He is, you saw for yourself. He's phenomenal. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. As always, God bless each and every one of you, and especially you. I come to you live Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. in Chicago, 3:30 p.m. out in Los Angeles. Subscribe, share, like, and binge watch all my back episodes, and share this episode with everybody. Copy and paste the link, email it, screen grab it. Professor Damon Fordham. He is a national treasure. He is just a unlimited fountain, reservoir of knowledge, truth, facts. So, like he said, be careful. And I'm paraphrasing, in times of crisis, false prophets do well. So go back and binge watch some of the episode. All right, everybody. Markel Bailey, the official barber and hairstylist of the Geno Jones Show. Check him out on Instagram, Kel B Cutting Up. Kel with a K, KELBECUTTINUP. Allie Jones, the drip director, the official wardrobe consultant and stylist for the Geno Jones Show. She is on Instagram, LX.NCL_. LX.NCL_ is that little dash. The next live edition of the Geno Jones Show, Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Walt Love is a candidate. He is running to be an alderman in the 9th Ward of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I know I got a lot of folks in the Midwest that watch me live in Chicago, Milwaukee. I did radio and TV in Milwaukee way back in the late 80s. I was there for a year. Had great success. So Walt Love, candidate to be an alderman in the 9th Ward in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Is going to come on and tell you why he wants to run to be an alderman representing the 9th Ward and what he plans to do. Facts. What he plans to do and what he will do to make the citizens, the people that live in that ward, if he is the 9th Ward and the city of Milwaukee, what he's going to do to make their lives better. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Everybody in the chat room. Mother, I love you more than life itself. Everybody else, I appreciate you watching live. Go back and binge watch this. This is a hot episode. Man, send this one to everybody. And I'll see you live Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. As always, be blessed. Pray for peace. And thanks for watching.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of The Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube.